Well, it's a significant, mention a day after. In fact, on Republic TV, we brought you the pictures of the anti-hijab revolution in Iran. We spoke to journalists in Iran. We got you the versions of the anti-hijab protesters in Iran. Pictures of women burning the hijab, throwing their veils in protest after a 22-year-old was killed by the hijab morality police, the morality police that is hunting down women, not really hunting down, but targeting women who are not fully clad or not wearing the hijab properly. And a 22-year-old was killed as a result of that. And in Iran, even as we speak, there are protests. It's one of the biggest talking points around the world. Women are saying enough is enough as these fundamentalist hardliners trying to enforce the hijab on them. And the Solicitor General is making that mention. He says there are constitutionally Islamic countries where women are fighting against hijab. That's what the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta mentioned. And the Supreme Court Justice Dulia asks which country. He asks which country is fighting against the hijab. And the Solicitor General has mentioned the Iran example, details of which were broadcast on Republic TV when women were being picked up by the morality police. Women are out on the streets along with men protesting how this clampdown should not happen, why the hijab cannot be enforced in such a way in Iran. I'm going back to Rhythm. So two big news points there. One, Rhythm, he has mentioned the PFI. Second, he has mentioned the anti-hijab revolution in Iran.
Oh yes, absolutely, and that becomes extremely crucial because now to make his arguments cohesive and complete, the Solicitor General is also pinpointing, Niranjan, what's happening outside the country globally in other Islamic countries to pinpoint the point this is not an essential religious practice. I think it's a very short argument and submission that is going to be made by the Solicitor General, who's taking very less time. He's in fact the petitioners took 7 days to make their arguments, and the Solicitor General, the first thing he said is he will possibly be concluding today itself. So what we are looking at here is whether that circular given out in Karnataka that said that there has to be a certain uniform followed will be upheld, or will it be dismissed, or will it be not looking there. I also want to tell our viewers the Solicitor General refers to an order of the United States Supreme Court and says freedom of expression arguments were made and rejected. So he's talking about Article 19(1)(a). But I want to pinpoint two of the important things, Niranjan, that the Solicitor General, Mr. Tushar Mehta, appearing for the state of Karnataka today, stated in his submissions. He first started off by saying there is a larger conspiracy. There's a movement that was begun by the PFI. It's very clear that these children were at that time then made a part of this so-called conspiracy without possibly knowing what was happening. That's a very crucial point because the angle of conspiracy comes into these protests that began in Udupi and in other parts of Karnataka, after which we saw 144 being imposed at that time there. We also did our investigation to unearth that, Niranjan, there was a conspiracy, there was a protest that was happening. But today the sentiments are also about Iran. We at Republic TV also showed what's been happening in Iran and how women want the freedom to be choosing for themselves whether they want hijab or not. The question that was also there today is whether it's an essential religious practice. The courts have also been told by the Solicitor General in a very crucial words by him, where they talk about the Holy Quran and they say whether hijab is mentioned there. He says maybe the hijab is mentioned in the Holy Quran when they assert that right before the court of law. Mere mention in the Quran will not by itself make it an essential religious practice. They have to show it is compelling. We have figures who've not been yet excommunicated for not following. It can be a permissible practice or at best an ideal practice, but is it an essential religious practice is the key word which has not been taken here. I also want to tell our viewers what's happening inside the courtroom in this hearing, a marathon hearing in the hijab case in the top court that began 8 days ago. Justice Gupta refers to Justice Chandrachud's judgment, saying in this way we have better precedents than any other country when it comes to freedom of expression arguments, and that's what they are looking at right now. But if we just stay with the two things that the Solicitor General has spoken about, Niranjan, he speaks about the Iran protest, and he's also trying to show the courtroom that even outside India this is not held to be an essential religious practice. The mention in the Quran will not make it essential. It may be permissible, it may be ideal, but it is not an essential practice. He also gives details about why Iran has been mentioned when he tells the courtroom that Iran is the place where constitutionally Islamic countries, women are fighting the hijab. Prajwal, if I can actually, Ankit, we can go across to Prajwal to get a sense of what's happening there, because this is something, Prajwal, we've seen constantly that the Solicitor General is telling the courtroom, do not see these protests as having been, there's a conspiracy. They didn't seem to be a harmonious protest.